So now this is what you'll see when you first set up FreeNAS and you go to the disks and management area. So you have no drive set up. Well, what you do is click over here where this little plus sign is. It says add disk. And it's going to ask you a bunch of questions. And it's going to bring up, first thing is disk, and it's going to bring you a list of all the drives. Well, you want to, obviously you don't want to set up the CD-ROM drive. You want to set up the hard drive that you've got attached. I have a 40 gigabyte IBM DeskStar hard drive, so I'm going to do that. Description, you can enter the description. You don't really need to. Transfer, leave auto, everything at auto. Hard disk standby time, if you want to save electricity, you can have it power down after 120 minutes or something. That's usually what I do, is set it to 120 minutes. We'll just leave it at default for now. Advanced power management, I usually, you know, you can turn that on if you like. I usually just leave it disabled. Acoustic level, you can leave disabled. Smart, I would activate smart monitoring, definitely, because you want it to inform you if your drive is starting to go south before you start to lose any information. Pre-formatted file system is only if you're putting in a disk that's been used for FreeNAS before. Say you're moving it to a new machine, from an old FreeNAS machine to a new machine. Well, then you can choose what file system exists on there already. So I'm going to leave it unformatted, and now I'm going to click add, and it's going to sit here and work for a few seconds while it adds that disk. And you can hear it actually, well, I can hear it writing configuration data to the floppy disk. So if you were using purely a USB method, it would be a little bit faster. So it's initializing the disk. So now what we're going to do is hit apply changes. And now you'll see after the changes are applied that the disk is set up and online. Well, now we need to format it. So we're going to go down to disk, and we're going to go to format, and you need to choose a disk, which is going to be this is the only one we have installed, which is our 40 gig drive. The file system, you always want to choose UFS. You always want to choose that. So just leave it there. That is the most efficient file system you can use, and that is for compatibility with FreeBSD. You could potentially use a FAT32 if you wanted to make the disks compatible with Windows later on. Say you wanted the ability to pop them in a Windows machine, but then you have problems with them getting fragmented, and there's also some stability problems. So right now for this how-to, we're going to choose UFS, and that's what I choose. You can give it a volume label, you don't have to. Free space, minimum free space. You can set that, that's obvious. Don't need to mess with that, leave that unchecked about the MBR. And now click Format Disk. And it's going to ask you, do you really want to format the disk? Because all data is going to be lost, yada yada. And so now what it's going to do is a quick format of that disk. This does not do any hardcore formatting, because it's hardcore, or what we used to call low-level formatting, doesn't even exist anymore, and there's no need to. So all that basically does is erase the master partition table and you can see it's done, and it warns you that UFS, the file system you chose, is a native file format for FreeBSD. So now we're done formatting. Now what do? We need to mount the disks. This is something that Linux users will know about. FreeBSD users will know about. Now here's what you'll see when you go to mount your disks. Completely blank. So again, just kind of like when we initialized the disk in the first place. we're going to create a Linux style or Unix style mount point, and they need to have a mount point just because that's just how Linux works. So we're going to click that little plus button that you just saw. Here's our management area. Type is disk, obviously. Disk, you need to choose whichever disk you're using. Obviously we only have one disk here, so this is our 40 gig drive. Partition type, leave at GPT. Don't need to mess with that. Partition number is 1, obviously. File system, again, needs to be UFS. Don't change that. Mount point name, I need to give it some kind of name. Just some kind of arbitrary name. I'm going to say IBM 40 gigabyte, just so I know what it is. Description, you can enter a description if you want. You can also mount this as read only, which means nobody would be able to write. They could just read files from it. No reason to do that. You can check this, tick this little box that says file system check, enable foreground background file system consistency checking. I encourage you to do that. It can make your boot process take longer should your power ever go out, or should you ever need to reboot the box, but it's better to be safe than sorry. You don't need to mess with the access restrictions. That's all set up the way it needs to be. So now all you gotta do is click add, which is what I just did, and it's going to sit there and do its thing and then write its configuration to the floppy disk. Now all we need to do, again, it's waiting on input from us, final approval, so we need to click apply changes. Now we're done. What we have successfully done now is completely mounted, we've initialized, connected, and mounted our hard drive to it's going to be prepared to share over the network with this machine. Well, at this point you can do a number of things depending on what you need it for. Our reason for using freenas is network attached storage with Windows machines. So you need to go over here to the services tab, and the very first service is CIFS/SMB. So you want to go there and you want to click on it. And you'll notice here there's lots of other servers you can enable. There's an FTP server, so you can FTP in. There's SSH, so you can SSH into the box. And if you're familiar with Linux and FreeBSD, use command line utilities. All kinds of stuff. All kinds. There's even a built-in BitTorrent server, which is amazingly handy if you know about BitTorrent. Amazing, amazing, amazing. We'll get, that's something out of the space of this how-to. So we're going to set this 40 gig drive up that we just mounted. We're going to set that mount point up to be shared across the network. Well, first we need to enable Samba, which is the kind of the protocol that all Windows machines share networking across. So click that.